But the number one right there is commerce. So if I was to ask you before you saw this slide, you would have probably thought the number one place was schools and education, right? Actually, the number one area is going to be commerce. So that's like retail stores, malls, businesses, and the second one is actually going to be education, and obviously that's schools, colleges, and campuses. And the third one is going to be outdoors. We're going to view this in a second, but we all saw in Las Vegas the festival that got attacked, right? That would be what's considered outdoors, so your outdoor festivals and types like that. And the last one, anybody want to take a guess as what that is? Churches, hospitals, and stuff like that. So the attacker is going to be connected to the area where it's attacked is going to be 55% of the time. So what we mean by that is, you know how I told you that the attackers, they do research and they try to figure out how to kill as many people as they can as fast as they can? So they have some sort of connection. So let's just use the one of the ones that we're going to talk about, one of the churches that was attacked. The guy that actually attacked the church, his mother-in-law was a member of the church for a very long time. So he had some kind of connection, right? And then 45% of the time, it's just sought out for some reason that they picked that place with no connection. So those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. So you know how I was telling you we do research on all the attacks and we try to find out as much stuff as we can about the attacker? Well, that's the reason we do that, because we don't want history to repeat itself, and hopefully we'll be able to get these events before they happen. And another thing that you'll notice during this presentation is we don't actually name the people who sought out the attacks, but we really pay respect to the victims and the families that lost loved ones. All right, so we got Santa Barbara, California. So we don't really call this active shooter events anymore. We call it attempted mass attacks. So the reason that we do that is mainly because of incidences like this. You have 3 people, while the student was in his residence, he stabbed 3 people to death. He then went outside with his firearm and started using his firearm, started shooting people on the streets on the campus. He then got in his vehicle and started running over people on the campus. This is a prime example of just pure evil. And that's why we call these, they're not really called active shooters anymore, because they're evolving and they're using other things to carry out their attacks. We got the Orlando, Florida. We all saw this on the news, right? This is the Pulse nightclub incident. Actually, when this happened, it was the second largest at its time. Anybody want to take a guess what the first one was? We all remember it, right? That's actually 9/11. That was considered an active shooter mass attack event. So this one, we had 49 people. And another thing that's interesting about this one is you know how I told you females a lot of the times they don't carry out these events? A man and a wife, they actually planned this event out and did their research, and they planned it. She didn't carry out on the killing, but she did have involvement in the planning of the murders. So 49 people were killed, 53 were injured. That's a lot of people, right? All right, now we're going to go over to Las Vegas, Nevada. So the coward who committed this attack, he rented out the hotel at the Mandalay for a week. He rented out 2 rooms. He did surveillance. He watched the workers in the room. He brought in hundreds of weapons into his room. He had a whole arsenal of weapons in there. He had got on the 32nd floor. He did his research. He knew that they were having a festival. And then over a span of 9 minutes, he fired 1,100 rounds, killing 59 people, injuring dozens more, from anywhere from, bullet wounds to critically injured, losing limbs. And this one is actually the second highest of its time. It passed the Pulse nightclub. But the thing that we learned for this one is 9 minutes is a long time under fires, right? The reason it took law enforcement so long to get there is because he did his research. He went over a block away, got up on the 32nd floor, and it took the officers a long time to figure out where the fires were coming from. All right, so now we're going to go to New York City. This guy, he went to the Home Depot, rented one of the trucks, got into the bicycle lane, and he ran over 8 people in the bicycle lane. The only reason he was stopped, as you see, is he crashed into a bus. All right, so now let's go to Sutherland Springs, Texas. The attacker started opening fire as he walked into the church. He killed 26 people, and the only reason he was stopped is because one of the neighbors, they heard the gunfire, and he was an old firearms instructor. He heard the fire, he ran across the street, he shot the attacker with his rifle. Well, the attacker fled, got in his vehicle, and then the civilian who shot him chased him down, and then he eventually ended up killing himself. I'll go ahead and play this video real quick.
From the hospital, he's still recovering from a bullet wound in the shoulder.
Everybody was so quiet, you could only hear the sound of the bullets. And people screaming. People screaming and people crying and, "Mama, where are you, Mama?" The little kids.
Was anybody trying to get away? Was there anywhere to go?
There wasn't nowhere to go.
You were all trapped.
We were trapped inside.
She says as Kelly fired off hundreds of rounds, reloading his weapon dozens of times, he yelled this message to his victims.
He said, "Everybody died?"
Yeah.
That's how he said. I had my ears covered up and, oh my God.
When you're like this and you're covering your head, what are you thinking?
I shouldn't have gone to church that day. He told me not to go. Let's not go. Let's just wait till next week. And I'm never going to see my grandchildren again. And I'm going to die.
As he exited the church, a local resident grabbed his rifle and engaged that suspect.
I'm no hero. I am not. I just wish I could have gotten there faster.
Stephen Williford was home less than a block away when his daughter ran in, telling him she heard gunfire at the church.
And every time I heard a shot, I knew that probably represented a life. I was scared to death.
But the former NRA instructor didn't freeze. He grabbed his gun, raced outside. He wasn't even wearing shoes.
Is the people at that church, they're friends of mine, their family.
As the gunman sped away, Williford spotted Johnny Langendorf.
The gentleman with the rifle came to my truck. He briefed me quickly on what had just happened and said that we had to get him, and so that's what I did. We hit about 95 going down 539 trying to catch this guy. He just hurt so many people.
My God, my Lord, protected me and gave me the skills to do what needed to be done.
During the chase, police say the shooter called his father.
The suspect used his cell phone to notify his father that he had been shot and didn't think he was going to make it.
The gunman lost control of his vehicle and crashed it into a ditch about 10 miles away at the Wilson-Guadalupe county line. An autopsy confirms that Williford did shoot him, but that ultimately Kelly killed himself.
2 gunshot wounds were from the armed citizen. One of those was in the leg and the other one was in the torso.
Back at the church, another neighbor, David Casillas, arrived just minutes
go ahead and go
after
to
the
the next one.
gunfire stopped.
All right, so I know a lot of these are hard to watch, but we really got to know what we're dealing with before we can address what to do, right? So this one's one that we just recently saw on TV, correct? So you got White Settlement, Texas. The attacker goes into the church, he sits down, he opens fire on 2 people, killing 2 people. And then he was stopped by one of the volunteer security team. They shot and killed him.
Now to Texas, where 2 people were killed by a gunman during a church service. The attacker was then shot and killed by members of the congregation. Correspondent Jeff Paul looks at the deadly assault that could have been much worse.
It was over in 6 seconds, but what happened in that brief moment will now last a lifetime for the members of a North Texas church and the families who lost loved ones.
To have something like this happen destroys my heart. And when I say destroys it because there is evil in this world.
Witnesses say the shooter was wearing a wig and fake beard while sitting in a pew during Sunday services at the West Freeway Church of Christ. That's when he got up and pulled out a shotgun.
Once he got up and he took communion is when he came around and is when he started shooting.
The suspect's shots ultimately left 2 dead. Church members identified the victims as Richard White and Tony Wallace. Many more of the 240 worshipers could have died had it not been for the split-second actions from parishioners like Jack Wilson, who pulled out his own gun, killing the suspect.
I don't see myself as a hero. I see myself as doing what needed to be done to take out the evil threat.
All right, so you remember what I told you when somebody comes to commit these acts, what is their goal? They're trying to kill as many people as possible, right? So just by that one person stepping in, they saved a lot of lives that day, correct? So I'll kind of get on this little soapbox for a second. So did you notice how in the video, like a lot of people were bending down and getting out of the way? That's kind of what we teach for when we teach these at churches. And then you had one person who had a firearm and they returned fire and then stopped the attacker, correct? Do you think that guy, he has firearms training and he uses his weapon on a daily basis, training, pretty proficient with it? So I encourage people to carry a weapon, but do not carry a weapon unless you're going to train with it on a almost weekly, daily basis. And training doesn't mean going to the shooting range. Training just means knowing where your firearm is and being able to get to it. But I'll give you a little quick story real quick. So when I worked for the city of Atlanta, when I was on motor unit, so we were directing traffic one day. One of the officers in Zone 5, he gets in a call, he's chasing somebody. Well, that happened all the time in Atlanta, so we just kept directing traffic. Well, then he said the suspect had a gun. So then we all run and we go to help him out. Well, when I got there, he was inside of a parking lot, and I seen it was one of the guys that I used to work night shift with, and there was a bunch of officers standing around the perimeter. They were stuck at this 10-foot fence. So I had my motorcycle, so I just drove up, jumped on the gas tank, jumped over the fence. Well, then I run and took cover behind a car. Well, then the guy started shooting at us. Well, you remember what I said is you can't shoot the gun unless you train, right? Well, I didn't feel comfortable shooting back at him because there was a wall, and the suspect was on this side of the wall, and one of my buddies was on this side of the wall. So if I was literally off just this much, I could have shot my friend, right? So I didn't take the shot because I didn't feel comfortable at that time. So if you carry a weapon and somebody comes into this door right now, how many people are between me and that person? Quite a few, right? So you really have to be mindful because you really don't want to shoot somebody that you're not meaning to shoot. So if you do have a firearm, make sure that you train with it. And just because you carry it, it is a good thing. And I do encourage people to carry a gun, but I also encourage you to train with it. So when we do the research, the number of deaths in these events is correlated into 2 things: how fast the police arrive, and then target availability. So what we're teaching youth today is to not be a target. And the way that we do that is we're going to teach you a couple of things to do. So how fast police arrive is actually 3 minutes. That sounds pretty good, right? That sounds pretty fast to me, and it actually is really fast. But if you're having to fight for your life, that'll be a long 3 minutes. If I started a timer right now and let 3 minutes pass, it'd be a long time. Just imagine you're there trying to save yourself over 3 minutes. So even though it seems like a very fast time, it's not when you're trying to protect yourself. So now that we kind of learned what we're dealing with, let's learn how our body reacts. And we're going to learn how to kind of get through that and learn what to do. All right, so there's 3 stages to disaster response. There's the denial, the deliberation, and then the decisive moment. So let's get into denial. All right, so the denial phase. Have you ever been at your house and you hear some what you think is fireworks, and there's a gun, and you just tell yourself that's fireworks? You want to know why your mind does that? Because it's easier to think about it being fireworks than to think about people getting shot and killed. Our minds are actually kind of lazy, and they revert back to things that are easy to know. So we got to get through that denial phase, right? So if you're somewhere and then there starts some smoke piling up, you probably think it was just something burning in the oven. You don't really think your kitchen's on fire, right? But you should act quick because you never know. We're actually going to start this video.
Place like this street in New York City, if you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility. Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill.
Help! Help!
How long before he gets help?
Please, somebody. Help! Help me, please help me.
Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
Please, somebody help me.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is two conflicting rules. One is the rule that we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help. And it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Four minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
Well, people don't really want to know. They just haven't got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You all right? You all right?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you look a bit clicky, you know what I mean?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
You want to sit up?
She don't look well, does she?
You all right? Yeah. What's wrong?
First I thought she was dead. Then I sort of checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her because there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
All right, so when I was talking about the denial phase, did you see how everybody was kind of walking by them and they were kind of in denial that anything was wrong? Well, that's what our minds do. So if you look at your pamphlet, we got the denial. And like I was saying, it's easier for us to think about something that's not horrible happened. We don't want to think about people dying, do we? That's why our brains, like I said, they're lazy. They don't want to think about that. They want to revert back to something that we know. And what we know is fireworks, right? Or something along those lines. So we got to get through that denial phase, and then we got to get through the deliberation phase. And the deliberation phase is actually where we start formulating a plan. All right, so for the purposes of this class, we're going to think of, we have two different functions in our brain. We have the human brain, which is what I'm using right now. It's slow, it's thinking, it uses critical thinking. It takes time to process stuff. And then we have the lizard brain. So I'm going to ask a question. I want you to raise your hand. Have you ever been driving your car and got from point A to point B and you don't realize how you got there? Yeah, that is actually when the lizard brain takes over. So the lizard brain, all the animals have it. the humans are the only ones with the function. I don't know the scientific terminology for it. We just call it the human brain. But we're that only function where we can actually use critical thinking and whatnot. And there are some other primates that have it. But so the lizard brain, we got fight, flight, or freeze. So when you train and when you do other things, you can actually put other thing in your bank. So that's what we're going to go over today. You keep going. All right. So the way that our body handles stuff is, like I said, is our bodies are very smart. So right now everybody's in what we would call condition white. We're nice and relaxed. Our heart's not beating very fast. We're just nice and relaxed. We're not really, there's no threat around us, okay? So have you ever been at home sitting on your couch and you hear a loud noise and your heart rate goes up? So our body has natural triggers in it that starts priming us up for a fight. It's naturally doing that. You don't even realize it's doing it. So then you would go into condition yellow. You hear that little noise, your heart rate goes up, you start breathing a little heavier, you start going into condition yellow. And then condition red, that's, let's just say you walk into the kitchen and you see some stranger in your kitchen. Then you'd be in what's called condition red. You start breathing heavier, right? Your body is primed up for a fight. And then, so all the blood in your body starts drawing to the larger muscle groups. So you're actually stronger and you're faster when you're in condition red. But you want to know what the bad thing about condition red is that my fine and my complex motor skills, they're not as strong. So I can't use my hands as good. I can't grip the weapon as good. But like I said, I'm stronger and I'm faster. So that's kind of where we want to stay, is in condition red. But let's just say, your heart rate goes up to 150. Then you would get what's called tunnel vision. So you're not able to see everything around you. So I could be staring at you right now, but I don't have any of my peripheral vision's gone. I'm fixated on a single thing. And then you would also experience auditory exclusion. So there could be gunshots going on around you, and your body's not even hearing it. And then you would also experience what's called time dilation. Everything will look like it's going in slow motion. Well, let's just say you go into condition black. We all heard of freeze, right? So we all seen it on Facebook or YouTube. When you watch those videos, somebody gets so scared they freeze up. That's because their body, they are automatically in condition black. So the reason that I told you about that is we're going to learn about stuff that we can program into our memory banks, that lizard brain takes over and we just react. We don't think about it, we react. You can go to the next one. So when you watch this video, if you have a child, how many times does it take you to get your kid out of a stroller? It should be an easy task, right? But under stress, you lose those fine motor skills and you lose those complex motor skills, and that affects how fast you do stuff, right? That's why it took them so long to get the kid out of the stroller. So we got to get out of the denial phase, and then we get into the liberation phase. I'm just going to play the video real quick. You can go to the next one. All right, so that map you saw, it's kind of hard to see, so I skip over it. That's the Station nightclub, and there's about 4 or 5 exits in the building. You can go to the next one. You remember what I was telling you about the denial phase? Do you think they're in denial right now? They really don't know what's going on, right? And it's been 30 seconds. right, so the important thing is to get out of the denial phase, right? So if you're going somewhere and you see smoke in the building, what would you think is happening? Well, they're at a concert, so they might be thinking it's part of the act, right? So it's kind of hard to see, but you see those orange circles right there? So that's actually people that died in that fire. So the entranceway, there's 31 people that died in the entrance. And there's 18 people right beside it, the wall, and there's 9 people right there in the middle. Why do you think so many people died right there? Yeah, that's the way they came in, and that's the only way they knew how to get out of there. So when you go somewhere, you need to know multiple exits. So if you'll see right there in the back, there's actually there's about 19 to 25 people that died in the kitchen area. When you go somewhere, what's always in the kitchen area? There's usually an exit door, right? But their bodies were so stressed. You remember those conditions I told you about? They didn't know how to react. So, you know, their body reverted back to the basic thing they knew, which was run, but they ran to the entranceway. That was the only way they knew of because they couldn't think. So we need to try to think about when you go in somewhere, you need to know where all the exits are, and you need to practice that every day. So that's the deliberation, formulating a plan. And that's just one of the pictures from the fire. All right, so remember during deliberation is calm yourself, breathe, and shift your emotions. What do you think we mean by shift your emotions? So if you're scared, what is something that you can easily shift being afraid of? What other emotion can you shift to? Anger? So you got to shift that emotion. All right, so ways that we can do that is I just said that. So what is called scripting is if you go somewhere, like right now, if you think about it, who in here has thought if somebody was to come into that door right now, what would I do? Has that crossed anybody's mind? Did you formulate a plan? So we got a plan, so that's what's called scripting. So you got to think about stuff, and it's horrible to think about, but when you go to the restaurant, you need to be thinking about what you're going to do if some crazy person comes in there and robs the place. You know, it's unfortunate, but, you know, whenever I take my daughter places, you know, my priority is making sure she's safe, and then I'll do whatever I have to do. But when I go to the restaurant, I look at all the exits, I people watch. That's just something that I've always done, but you really need to be aware of your situation. And the second thing is practice. So you could run drills. We all did the fire drills when we were kids, right? The firemen came to our schools and told us what to do, and then you went home and you're all excited and you told your parents and you made them do it. Well, unfortunately, we have to do that now with mass attack events. It's sad, but it's something that we have to do. So what is one thing I could tell my daughter when we go to the restaurant if something happens? What is something I could tell her? Like a safe space, where to run to, you know? So that's stuff that we got to do. Has anybody ever heard of Rick Rescula? You have? So he, during 9/11, he actually brought it to the attention of a lot of the upper management in the buildings that they needed to formulate a plan. They needed a plan of action in case anything happened. Well, just like with a lot of corporations, they really didn't listen to him. They wanted to save the money. You can go to the next one. Go ahead and pause it real quick. But what he did was he actually trained his staff members on his floor what to do in case something happened. And he's accredited for saving hundreds of people during the attacks in 9/11. And he actually went back into the building to try to save more people. And he didn't make it back out. But the thing that he did, and he's accredited for, is he had that decisive moment. He had that deliberation. He had the plan, and he trained his coworkers. And like I said, he's accredited for saving hundreds of people because he had a plan and he put it in action. The next thing that we're going to learn about is we already learned about the denial. We got to get out of the denial phase, right? And then we need to do what? Formulate a plan. And then what's the next thing? We need to act on it, right? So that's called decisive moment. So let's watch this video.
Little less than a month ago, three childhood friends were on a train bound for Paris when they heard a gunshot. Amid screams and commotion of the passengers, they quickly focused on a man wielding an AK-47. Almost instantly, one of them said, "Let's go," and the three ran toward the shooter. Those three friends are with us here today. Thank you, Alec, Spencer, and Anthony, for what you did on that train and for joining us here. And that's because after Alec said, "Let's go," he and Spencer and Anthony sprinted toward the gunman while he trained his rifle on them. Spencer tackled the assailant, and the three worked to disarm him. As we know, Spencer was stabbed in that effort. After they knocked out the gunman, they tended to other injured on board before paramedics and police arrived.
All right, so they were on the train. They saw somebody that looked like they were about to carry out an attack. Did they get through the denial really quickly? Did they formulate a plan quickly? And did they act quickly? And then what happened? They saved a lot of lives, all right? All right, so the civilian response, what we want to teach you to do. Let's jump right into it. All right, so we got get out of denial. You can skip over this one. All right, so if you hear that, what do you think that is? That's obviously gunshots, right? But if you're sitting at your home and you're watching TV and you hear something, you think your neighbor's just out there target shooting or something? That's probably a possibility, right? But you need to be on alert that there could be something else happening, right? All right, so is hiding and hoping, is that a good option or is there a better option? There's better options, right? All right, so you can go to the end of this one. All right, so what we're going to teach is avoid is run. Keep going. Deny is hide. Keep going. And then defend and fight. And we'll jump right into it. All right, so we learned that you should get out of denial, formulate a plan, and act, right? So let's watch this video, and y'all tell me what you see.
And from the technology, you'll notice it's on the chart that you have there, and it's part of the plan that we have, that the workshop we're going to have to follow this meeting, but this would be the first step in that whole process. I have a motion. A motion. Everybody in this room behind that counter at the road. Please, certainly.
All right, he's got a gun and he's pointing it at the councilman.
Everyone else leave. Hey, sir. John, just let him talk. He's talking. John, go ahead.
What did y'all notice in that video? There's a lot of denial going on, right? If somebody walks in there with a gun and tells you to hit the road, should you sit there and get your purse? Should you get your cell phone? You should hightail it out of there, right? And who said they hit, the lady hit? Yeah, so she did a brave act, right? So if you can't run and you can't deny and you fight, if you're gonna fight, is hitting somebody with a bag, is that gonna hurt them or disable them? Yeah. So if you're gonna fight, what should you do? Is eye gouging, is that pretty? But if you're fighting somebody for your life, can I do that? I should do that, right? I do whatever it takes possible to get out of there. I'm not going to hit them with a bag. Some people, you see how some people is just laying laying down after he said, get out of there. What do you think's going on with them? Fear, freeze. There's a lot of things that could be running through their mind, right? So we don't know how we're going to react when we're put in a situation. But that's why you got to do what I told you about the scripting and practicing. If you tell yourself over and over again what you're going to do if something happens, what do you think your body's going to do? You remember that lizard brain I told you about? It's going to take over. It's going to get you out of there before you know it. All right, so like I said, avoid, make sure you have situational awareness. If somebody walked into this door right here, where would be a good place for me to go? Yeah, not out that door, right? So that's a question you have to ask yourself. Are you going to run or are you going to fight? I can't answer that question for you. I know what I would do, but I can't answer the question for you. If you're going to fight, like I said, you're going to fight for your life. You're going to play dirty, do whatever it takes. So know your exits. So if somebody comes in this door, where's the viable exits for me? Yep, anyone that's not where the person is, right? If you got to, jump through a window, do whatever you got to do. And while we're speaking about the church, if something was to happen at church, who are we looking out for? The children, right? Because they can't protect themselves. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, so we got avoid. All right, this is my guy coming up. Watch him. I like this guy. He got out of there quick, didn't he? All right, you can go to the next one. All right, y'all remember that video that we watched where the lady couldn't get her kid out of the stroller? That was the same video, the guy walking in with the gun. So I know it's kind of hard to see, but so can you see right there that person sitting there by the exit door in the corner? If you're looking at the screen, it's the top right. Somebody's sitting there squatted down. Yeah. Let's just say click 2 more times, I think. Let's just say the door's locked. What other options do they have? The ladder. What other options? Click on the next one. They could barricade the door. Keep going. All right, so if we can't run away, what can we do? We can deny them access. So would blocking that door, he had a lot of stuff in there, right? So we could block it. We can lock it, lights out of sight. That's what we teach the schools to do for the children. All right, so if you can't run away, you need to barricade. So deny and hide. So the heavier the better, the more the better, and door stops. Is that better? Have you ever been like a little kid playing with your brothers and your sisters and you hold the door closed with your foot? It's pretty hard to get in for the door, right? Especially if it's a nice sturdy door. And they're really cheap and they're really effective. All right, keep going. We already looked at this one. It's just saying that what they could use to barricade that door. All right, so if you have an outward opening door, what can you use to secure it better? Obviously, we probably don't have rope, but what else do we have on us? We have a belt, right? And then these locks are really inexpensive. It's something to look at for your classrooms and stuff. You can skip over this one.
We have met
Yes.
people who remind us.
All right, so if you're going to fight, where's a good place if I'm in a room and let's just say there's a single door. So let's imagine this is a smaller room and the only door able is over there. There's no doors back here. If somebody's trying to get in, where's the best place for me to be if I'm going to fight? By the door. Why is that? Because I can attack them as soon as they come in, right? So if you're going to attack and they have a gun, what is a smart thing to do? Try to get the gun away from them, right? And remember, when I said you're fighting for your life, there's nothing off limits. Eye gouge, do whatever you have to do, throat punch. And just make sure if you're fighting, you fight for your life. You see the lady in the blues just laying in the floor, hiding in plain sight? You can go to the next one. So when we look at videos, we're not saying anybody did anything wrong. We're just looking at, we're using that as a training opportunity for us to try to figure out something better. So with that fighting mentality in mind, so when you watch like those nature videos and you stuff, what is like the most ferocious animal? Is any mama, right? Yeah. You think of that mama bear? You don't want to mess with a mom, right? So when you're fighting for your life, you need to turn that on. We all heard about those stories where, you know, the kid gets trapped under the car and you hear about people having like supernatural strength and stuff. That's that body getting in that condition red, and you're stronger and you're faster. So this right here says, I'm not going to go out in a parking lot. I'm not going to go out like this. I'm not going to, I can't even see that. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. I'm not going to let my wife down. I'm not going to let my daughter down. And I'm not letting my stepkids down. That's the mentality that you need to have, is that you're going to go home. You're going to go home to your family, and you're going to do whatever it takes. I guess I need to start wearing my glasses when I do these. All right, so just remember to avoid is run, deny is hide, and if you're going to defend, that's fight, right? All right, so what you do matters. So we saw the video of the person laying on the ground and people kept walking by and not doing anything, right? So what happened when somebody finally broke the norm and went over there and helped? Other people help, right? So if something happens in here and you do the right thing, what is everybody else going to do? They're going to do the right thing, right? So when I go to fancy restaurants and I don't know what fork to use, what do? I look at other people, right? That's what we do. We're social creatures. We like to watch each other. So if you do the right thing by running away and getting out, could you save other lives? You definitely could, right? So let's just say somebody came into the church right there, and all you are facing me, right? So if I did the right thing and I acted properly, would you start responding the right way? So what would be a good idea for you to run? I told you run out the exit doors, right? But how should you run to say if I started engaging the person at the exit? You kind of want to get away from me to them. That way I have a shot, right? So you notice all the people in the church, they ducked down while they were running, right? So that's just something to think about. If you have your security personnel, you want to not hinder them in any way, which is hard when you're running for your life, but it's just something that you have to practice and script, right? Go all the way to the end. All right, so the attack starts. What are the primary exits? If I can get out an exit, I should avoid, right? If I can't avoid, what should I do? I should try to deny access, right? If I can't avoid it and I can't deny it and there's no other exits, what should I do? I should fight. And how am I going to fight? Like that mama bear, right? All right, so this kind of hits close to home for me because, like I said, I have a child. And this video is kind of hard for me to watch, but just to give you a heads up. All right, so this is the Virginia Tech. You can go to the next one. All right, so we all heard about this on the news, right? Go ahead and click it to the last slide. One more. That's one more. All right, so you see right there in room 206, you see the red dots? Those are students that were killed. You see the yellow, that's injured, and the green are the ones that weren't injured. So room 206 got hit hard, right? You see room 211? All right, so room 211, there was a lot of casualties in there, and there's a lot of people injured. That was the first room that the attacker came in, and the students didn't have any time to react. So what they did was they hid in plain sight, and a lot of them laid down and acted like they were dead. So the shooter, he kept going from room to room. He kept coming back to 211 because it was what? it wasn't barricaded, it was accessible. And what is his main goal? To kill as many people as possible. So one of the videos, the girl student in there, she talks about laying down on the ground, and she heard what she thought was actually somebody hitting some wood with an axe. It was actually gunshots. So, that's that denial phase where I told you our minds are lazy. They don't want to think about people getting killed. They go to something else like, is there a parade today? Is there fireworks outside? They don't want to be thinking about somebody coming in to kill us. So room 211, go back for me one more time. So room 211 had the most. So room 206 had the second most. And then room 207. And then we're going to get to room 204. What do you think happened in room 204? There's at the door, there's there's two people that got killed at the door, and then a lot of people got out that window back there. So what do you think happened at the door? The professor barricaded the door along with another student, and he actually got killed while holding the door shut while the students jumped out and like I said, they're on the what floor? They're on the second floor, so they jumped out the window, they got out of there. So room 205, what do we think happened there with the X, meaning the door wasn't open? Yeah, they barricaded the door. So the way that they barricaded the door is one of the students, or two of them, I can't remember, they actually laid down on the ground and put their feet up against the door. That's how they actually barricaded it. And why was that smart? If somebody shoots a gun through a door, a wooden door, can the bullet go through the door? All day long, right? So you have what's called cover and you have what's called concealment. So they knew that the bullets would go through the door, and that's why they laid down, because are they concealed there? Can he see them through the door? No, he can't. So that's what happened in room 205, which is the ideal situation. You can keep going. That's just the stats. All right, so what we're going to learn now is when the police arrive. So there's two different schools of thought. So we all saw Columbine, right? Law enforcement, they waited outside. They waited on SWAT teams. They didn't enter the building, right? Because that was the way they were trained back then. So what do we do when we have these? We do research. We develop new strategies, right? So now, about 10 years ago, what they would do is if something is happening, law enforcement immediately goes inside. You don't wait on a partner. You just go in. If you hear gunshots, you go towards the gunshots. You don't clear the rooms. You just go where the shooting is. So we've been having a lot of these incidents lately, and then what we're finding out is people were actually, like in the Virginia Tech incident, it'd be an hour or so before we're getting medical aid in there and getting people saved. So now what we do, they just started this maybe 8 years ago or so, is law enforcement will go in, they'll go towards it, but then they'll start small groups of law enforcement and small groups of EMT, fire, whoever gets on scene. They actually go in with the officers and they start treating the casualties. They do that way, people don't bleed out, and we save as many people as possible. And that's just the way that, we did the research, and we try to save as many people as possible, so we changed our tactics. So when the police arrive, like that said, hold your hands up. And why do you think that we ask you to do that? So we know that you're not one of the people, right? And then once you do get outside, you're not free to go. They actually hold you off, and they check until the perimeter's safe. So the police response, our first thing is to stop the killing. And after we've done that, then that's when we bring in the EMTs and whatnot to stop the dying, and then we evacuate the injured. There is some profanity in this, so don't judge me.
Are you ready?
It's not me.
If you're not cool, I'm not walking a dude. Sir? Go. Walk to that deputy right there. Keep your hands where I can see him. All the way to that deputy. You're going to make the left of the deputy's out. Thank you. Try to relax, everyone. Try to relax. I'll take a bullet before you do. That's for damn sure. Just be cool, okay?
All right, so you see when they were leaving, they had their hands up. And that's because the officer, he doesn't know who the attacker is, because a lot of times you think they try to blend in with the crowd all the time. So normally, before police arrive, 50% of the time, the event has already stopped. And why do you think that is? 10% of the time they kill themselves or they give up. Because like I said in the beginning, these people that commit these are cowards. So the training EMS, there's a slight delay, and that's because, you know, they got to go in and see the threat. But like I said, training has changed, so we actually go in with small groups to make that better. You can go to the next one. You can go to the next one. One more. All right, so that's Victoria Soto, first grade teacher. And at the end of the presentation, we'd like to just, you know, kind of pay tribute to some of the victims. And she was at the Sandy Hook attack. And then Angela McQueen, she was the PE teacher. She actually barricaded a door and saved a lot of kids, and she's a survivor. And, you know, that's a hard thing we put on our teachers, right? Is asking them to do stuff like that. But, you know, with today's day and age, you know, we all, even as members of churches, we have to be prepared. So what's the first thing that we need to get out of? The denial, right? And then we need to deliberate. And then we need to do what? Act. So when you go to the restaurants, what are you going to do now? You're going to check the exits. Yep, face the door, be aware of your surroundings. And if something's suspicious, should you keep an eye on it or just act like it's probably nothing? Probably keep an eye on it, right? Well, that's the end of the presentation. Has anybody got any questions about anything? I tried to stay under an hour. I'm sorry. Yeah. They pretty much shoot whoever they can as fast as they can. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just whoever is the easiest accessible. That's how we saw on that map at the Virginia Tech. They went from door to door to get to who they could get to the fastest. And that's what we teach here is the target availability. You know, you see something, you got to get through that denial and you got to act. But that's a question you have to ask yourself is if you're going to run or if you're going to fight. And, you know, honestly, a lot of 50% of the ways these are stopped is from civilians acting. Just like we saw in the video in the Texas shooting. If those guys wouldn't have acted, there would have been a lot more people killed. So that's a question you have to ask yourself. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Well, like I was saying, they do that, but that's why we're out in the community because honestly, by the time we get there is how many minutes? It's 3 minutes, right? So honestly, the best deterrent for this is actually yourself. But there is things in place. We all saw that officer down in Florida that he didn't go into the school, right? You know, he got the hammer put on him, but actually the Supreme Court says that he actually didn't owe a duty to go inside of the school, but that's why they're changing the legislation is because he signed up for the job. He should have to go in there. But as far as the other stuff, you know, it's just trying to make community awareness, and 3 minutes is a long time, and, you know, we do these civilian programs to try to deter that, you know. Anybody else got any questions? It's pretty much voluntary. So if you have so law says if you want to, we'll just say if you want to bring a firearm into church, you have to have the permission of, for here, it would be the preacher. So if you have the permission, but like I said, as far as the security team, it's a voluntary program, or you could hire security. It just depends on what the church decides. if you have the permission of the preacher, yeah. 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 Legally, yeah, as long as you have, like I said, the permission of the preacher. But like I said, I wouldn't recommend you having a firearm unless you use it quite frequently, and because it would be pretty horrible to accidentally shoot somebody else. And because you remember what our body does during stress, and if you don't, a good way to do it is, do stress your body out, do push-ups, sit-ups, run, and then shoot. That trains your body on how to shoot under stress, and that's what I do for the officers at the police department. I put them through very stressful situations, and we have what's called force on force. So we actually have Glock guns that shoot paint projectile, and it's almost as realistic as you can get to being in an actual shootout. So they train on actual being in that kind of stuff. And yeah, we do a lot of training as far as like building clearing and whatnot. It just depends on, like I know Cherokee County does a lot of it, and we do a lot of stuff. And I was talking to him about it, and we're going to get him some training materials and help out any way we can. We do a lot. We actually have a civilians police academy. We do civilian firearms classes. We actually do, I'll touch base when I'm talking about training. We actually do a women's self-defense class. If we have enough people here, we'll do it for free. It's you learn how to do basic self-defense on how to get away from somebody if somebody's trying to abduct you or attack you. And you remember what I told you about our body does stuff that's natural to us when we're under stress. So this teaches you how to react under stress and get away. Any other questions? Well, that's how you saw in that Virginia Tech incident. That's how all those people got shot, is because he actually came back in there, and even if you were laying on the ground, the guy actually kept shooting. And the video that I skipped was actually one of the female students who laid down and played dead. She said he kept coming back in there, and he shot her a couple times while she was trying not to breathe. So it's not, the most effective thing is, if you can avoid, get out of there and run. If you can't, is to try to barricade. And then if that fails, you fight for your life, or, you're just an easy target. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate y'all letting me come out, and if anybody's got any questions after I finish, feel free to come up and ask me.
We will get a sign-up sheet. I've already talked to Jesse.